They hired me to retrieve it, but the seed already chose a host.
The first Sarai smiled from the wall as the station patrol started cutting their way in, and Sarai understood she had less than a minute to decide who she would become. Kestrel Ring needed the seed to keep its dying systems alive, but the contract was bait and the Council's patrol was already at the hull. Inside the quarantined archive ship Solace of Tythran, nanophage fog moved like a disciplined swarm, and Jonah's mind was being tested as a host. Sarai stood in a narrowing corridor with the seed pulsing in her hands, an exit ahead, a trap behind, and a version of herself offering a single solution. Metal shrieked outside. A cutter bit into the docking collar. "Moth, respond," the patrol voice barked through external comms. "Release the seed under Council's supervision." Jonah's breathing hitched. His voice had that faint double tone again, like a second speaker learning the rhythm of his throat. "Sarai, I'm hearing counting." Louder. Sarai tightened her grip on his hand. "Stay with me. Name 3 real things." Jonah blinked hard. "You hate being called a tool. You drink tea like it's an argument. And you just saved me from a ship that thinks consent is optional." A sound almost like laughter escaped Sarai, fast and strained. "Good. Keep that mouth busy." The wall Sarai's calm voice slid through the corridor like a blade through cloth. "Merge, and I will hold the seed's load. He will stop fracturing." Sarai stared at the embedded face. Same eyes, same cheekbones. A different stillness, the kind that comes from waiting too long in one place. "How do I know you won't take over?" Sarai demanded. "You do not," the wall Sarai answered. "You only know what happens if you do nothing." Outside, the cutting sound changed pitch, progress. The patrol was nearly through. Jonah leaned closer until their helmets almost touched. "Sarai," he said softly, and the softness mattered. "I don't want you to disappear." "I don't want you to become a container," she replied. Jonah's gaze held hers. "Then don't choose for the Council, choose for us." There it was, a simple sentence, a lifeline. Not romance as a performance, but as a shared decision under pressure. Sarai exhaled. "If I do this," she said, "you keep talking, you keep me anchored." Jonah swallowed. "I can do talking, it's my main skill." Sarai lifted her free hand and pressed her palm to the metal where the wall Sarai's chest would be. The alloy felt warm, alive, like skin pretending it was machinery. "Fine," Sarai said, "but on my terms." The wall Sarai's eyes brightened. "There are no terms, only integration." Sarai's diver band flared with heat. Pain lanced through her wrist, sharp and clean, like a seal breaking. The corridor hummed in harmony, then dropped into silence so complete it felt like the universe held its breath. Then Sarai heard it, not a voice in speakers, a second awareness sliding into the edges of her thoughts. It did not shove, it settled. A memory not hers unfolded, a white room, a lullaby. A hand on her forehead, gentle, counting her breaths as if she were fragile glass. Sarai's knees almost buckled in zero-G. Jonah caught her by the forearm. "Talk," Sarai rasped. "Now." Jonah's voice rushed in, steady by force. "Protein paste is evil. The station owes me a refund. Your stare is still terrifying. You're still you. Tell me you're still you." Sarai latched onto his words. She squeezed his arm once hard, a signal. "I'm here," she said, and felt the sentence echo twice in her own mind. The wall Sarai's presence tightened like a muscle flexing. Not hostile, testing. The seed pulsed in Sarai's other hand, then softened as if relieved. The dark filaments inside it stopped thrashing and began to spiral in a calmer pattern. Jonah gasped. The double tone in his voice faded. The counting stopped. Sarai's vision sharpened. The fog, which had been an obedient audience, now felt like a limb she had forgotten she owned. She could sense its density, its motion, its hunger. She could also feel a boundary, a line it would not cross unless she allowed it. The wall Sarai's voice came from inside Sarai's head now, close as a whisper. "You can command it. Do not fear what you are." Sarai swallowed bile. "I'm not yours," she murmured. "Not mine," came the reply. "Ours." Outside, the patrol's cutter punched through. A brief hiss of atmosphere, a clang of clamps. Breach complete, the patrol voice snapped. Prepare for boarding. Sarai lifted her chin. The solace had called her a key. Fine, keys opened doors. They also locked them. She reached outward with her mind, not with words. The fog responded instantly. It surged down the corridor behind them and condensed into a thick, glittering wall, sealing the breach route like a living bulkhead. Jonah stared, wide-eyed. You just told the nightmare dust to build a door. Don't make it sound impressive, Sarai said. Her voice shook. I'm trying to stay calm. A muffled shout came from beyond the fog wall. Metal hit the barrier, then stopped. The fog did not eat through their tools. It simply refused them. Sarai felt the solace's satisfaction and beneath it something like pride, a nursery recognizing its caretaker. No, not caretaker, she corrected herself. Not that. Airlock, Sarai said to Jonah, now before it changes its mind. They moved fast, tether lines reeling, boots tapping lightly on ribs of alloy. The corridor lights flared ahead, guiding them like a runway. The solace wanted them to leave. It wanted the seed moved. It wanted the council denied. At the airlock, Jonah's hands flew over controls. Moth is still pressurized, but the patrol is latched to our outer ring. Sarai closed her fingers around the seed. It felt lighter now, as if the burden had shifted from Jonah to the new silence inside her. The seed pulsed once and a phrase formed in Sarai's mind with unsettling clarity. Carrier secured. Path assigned. Sarai stiffened. Jonah looked up sharply. What? I just heard it, Sarai said. The seed, not the ship, the seed. Jonah's face went pale. It can talk. Sarai didn't answer, because another piece arrived, softer like a hand placed on her shoulder. Returned to the foundry. The airlock cycled open. They pushed into the moth, slammed the inner seal, and Jonah dropped into the pilot cradle with shaking hands. Alarms blared as the patrol tried to override their docking clamps. Hold on, Jonah said. This is going to be ugly. Sarai reached again. The fog outside answered, threading through the docking collar like smoke through teeth. It wrapped the patrol clamps, not destroying them but coaxing them open with patient pressure. Jonah's eyes widened. You're unlocking us. Sarai's mouth was dry. I think the solace is letting me. The clamps released. The moth lurched free. Jonah punched thrusters and the ship snapped away from the derelict in a clean arc. Behind them, the solace remained in quarantine glow, silent now. The patrol craft tried to pursue, then abruptly stalled as its systems flickered under a thin veil of fog that refused to chase them, but also refused to be commanded by anyone else. Jonah exhaled in a broken laugh. We just stole an illegal incubator from the council. Sarai sank into the co-pilot seat, still gripping the seed. The presence inside her was quiet, watchful, not speaking, listening. Jonah turned his head toward her, eyes exhausted, alive. Are you okay? Sarai wanted to say yes. She wanted it desperately. Instead, she said the most honest thing she could manage. I don't know, she whispered, but I'm still here. Jonah's gaze softened. His voice went gentle, almost teasing, like he was giving her a rope to hold again. Good, because if you start acting like a wall with opinions, I'm filing another complaint. Sarai let out a small, shaky laugh, and it felt like a victory. The comm panel lit up with an encrypted ping, not from the station, not from the patrol, but from the seed itself. A coordinate packet, a route, a destination label that made Sarai's blood run cold. Found RY origin node. Jonah stared at the display. Sarai, he said slowly, tell me that's not where you think it is. Sarai looked out at the dark, at Kestrel Ring's distant glow, and at the derelict behind them that had called her home. The seed pulsed once in her hands as if eager. If the only way to keep Jonah free and stop the council is to fly straight toward the place that made you, would you go? Sarai realized the ship wasn't trying to trap her in metal. It was trying to trap her in herself. They had come for the seed to save Kestrel Ring, but the solace had offered an exit only if Jonah carried it, and the first Sarai in the wall was pushing her toward a single terrifying option. Now the corridor lights guided them toward the airlock like runway lamps, while the fog waited for her decision like a patient weapon. "Don't listen to it," Jonah said, yet his voice had a faint double tone, like someone was speaking half a syllable behind him. Sarai kept him close, tether line short, her palm pressed to his wrist as if she could hold his mind in place by sheer stubbornness. The seed pulsed through her glove. Each beat matched Jonah's heart, and that made her want to scream. "I need you lucid," she said. Jonah swallowed. "Define lucid, because my brain currently has a flashback subscription I didn't sign up for." "Talk to me," Sarai said. "Real things." Jonah forced a breath. "Your hair is doing that thing again. The silver strands look like they're floating, even in still air." Sarai blinked, caught off guard. "We are literally floating." "Still counts," Jonah said. "Also, you're doing the unblinking stare. It's impressive and mildly threatening." "Good," Sarai replied. "I'm trying to intimidate the ship." The fog rippled as if offended. The wall Sarai spoke from behind them, calm as a manual. "Merge, and you will both survive intact." But Sarai did not turn around. If she looked, she feared the pull, not the ship's pull, hers, the hunger to stop being questioned by every mirror in the galaxy. "What does merge mean?" Jonah asked, voice tight. "Like spiritually? Or like, we're about to do something that should require a medical consent form?" "It means returning what was cut," the wall Sarai answered. "The seed was never meant for you to carry alone. It was meant to be carried by the original." Sarai tasted metal in her mouth. "You mean you?" "Yes," the wall Sarai said. "And you." Jonah's fingers squeezed Sarai's wrist. "I don't like how it says that." Sarai leaned closer, until their helmet lights overlapped. "Jonah," she said softly, "if I start agreeing with it, you stop me." "With what?" Jonah tried to smile. It came out crooked. A stern lecture, a slap, because both options seem unpopular. "Words," Sarai said. "Use words. Remind me who I am." Jonah's eyes steadied on hers. The fog around his suit seemed loosened, just a fraction, like it respected their focus. "You're Sarai Vanth," he said. "You break into dead ships for a living. You pretend it's professionalism, but it's curiosity. You act like you don't need anyone, and then you put your hand on my wrist like you're afraid I'll vanish." Sarai's throat tightened. That is a very observant statement for a man currently being haunted. Jonah's voice dropped. "I'm not vanishing." Something in Sarai unclenched. A connection moment, fragile and sharp. Not romance as a grand declaration. Romance as a decision to stay present when panic offered easier exits. She turned her head slightly, just enough to see the wall Sarai in the corner of her visor. The embedded figure watched with her eyes. Sarai hated how familiar that gaze felt. "If you're the first," Sarai said, "then you know what it's like to be used as a key. Why would you help the council make more of us?" The wall Sarai's expression softened. "I would not. They will take the seed and grow more keys. They will call it rescue. They will call it necessity. Then why are you pushing me to merge?" Sarai demanded. "Because the only thing they cannot command," the wall Sarai said, "is a whole diver." Jonah's breath hitched. "Whole as in stronger." "Whole as in unbreakable," the wall Sarai replied. "If you remain separate, they will dismantle you. If you merge, they cannot separate you again without killing you. That creates leverage." Sarai felt the truth of it like a cold coin placed on her tongue. Leverage. Survival by becoming too expensive to take apart. A new sound threaded through the corridor hum. 3 sharp pulses. Not the solace. External calm. The moth's channel cracked open. "Moth, respond," came a voice, official and brisk. "This is Kestrel Ring Authority Patrol. You are docked to a quarantined vessel. Confirm retrieval status. Prepare for escorted transfer." Jonah went still. Authority Patrol, that was fast. Sarai's eyes narrowed. Too fast. The wall Sarai spoke with quiet certainty. "They tracked your approach. The contract was bait." Sarai's pulse spiked. "Jonah, did you file our flight plan publicly?" Jonah looked genuinely offended. "No, I'm irresponsible, not suicidal." The external comm continued, firmer now. "Moth, respond. You will release the seed under council supervision. Failure to comply will be treated as quarantine breach." Sarai felt the fog shiver with amusement, as if the solace enjoyed being proven right. Jonah's voice shook. "Sarai, I'm hearing counting again." The seed pulsed faster. The double tone in Jonah's words grew stronger, like a second mouth learning his rhythm. "Give me your hand," Sarai said immediately. Jonah did. She gripped him hard enough that he winced. "Real," she said. "Stay real." Jonah stared at her. "Your eyes," he whispered. "They're brighter." "That's fear," Sarai said. "It makes me glow." Jonah's laugh was small, but it landed. "Of course it does." The wall Sarai's voice cut in, urgent for the first time. "They will breach in minutes. They have cutters, they have suppressors, they have a lab waiting." Sarai's mind raced. If she left now with the seed, the authority patrol would seize it and Jonah with it. If she stayed, the ship could lock them in forever. If she merged, she would become something she could not undo. Jonah's gaze flicked to the corridor behind them, then back to Sarai. His voice dropped, almost intimate. "I don't want to be a container," he said, "and I don't want you to disappear into a wall." Sarai's chest ached. "I don't know which choice keeps you alive." Jonah's eyes softened. "Then choose the one that keeps you." Outside, metal struck metal, a docking clamp, a hiss of cutting tools against the Solace's outer seal. The wall Sarai spoke like a vow. "Merge now and we can move the seed without tearing him. We can leave before they enter." Sarai looked at Jonah, really looked, as the fog waited and the station's patrol began to cut their way in. Jonah's hand stayed in hers, trembling but present. If you had seconds to decide, would you merge with the version of yourself you don't trust to save the person you do? The seed chose Jonah the instant Sarai hesitated, and the Solace reacted like it had been waiting for that exact heartbeat. They had boarded the quarantined archive ship to retrieve the seed for Kestrel Ring, only to find a second Sarai fused into the wall who claimed to be the original. Now the corridor was sealing behind them. The nanophage fog obeyed the ship like a trained animal, and the price had a human name. "Jonah, eyes on me," Sarai said. "I'm trying," he answered, but his gaze kept sliding to the pale sphere in her hand. The lights behind them sank to dim twilight. Ahead, the seed's cradle and the fog's faint glow made a narrow tunnel of visibility. Sarai's diver band pulsed warm against her finger, like the ship was tapping her shoulder and asking for cooperation. Goal: take the seed back within 6 hours before Kestrel Ring's life support failed. Danger: nanophage, echo hazards, and a protocol that treated people like containers. The wall Sarai's voice flowed from the bulkhead. "Do not resist. You will both leave if he carries it." Jonah let out a thin laugh. "That's a comforting sentence if you ignore every word in it." Sarai kept the seed low, close to her chest. "What happens to him after?" "He lives," the wall Sarai replied. "He changes, he becomes stable." Jonah's eyebrows lifted. "That sounds like medical malpractice with poetry." Sarai almost smiled. "Stay sharp." "I'm sharp," Jonah said. "I'm also terrified." The fog drifted toward Jonah's helmet, then paused, as if waiting for permission. Sarai stepped between them. "Use me," she said to the ship. "You called my name." The lights flickered once, indifferent. Jonah's gloved fingers touched Sarai's forearm, careful and warm even through suit layers. "Hey," he said quietly. "If you start hearing that lullaby again, tell me. I'll sing something worse." "You cannot sing," Sarai said. "I can," Jonah insisted. "It's just culturally controversial." The absurdity landed. Sarai's breath eased for a second, and the fog ring wavered as if their tiny moment of normal didn't fit its math. She leaned closer to Jonah until their helmets nearly touched. "If it reaches for you, you listen to me, not to it." "Give me something to listen to," Jonah said. Sarai chose the simplest truth she could afford. "You are not my payment," she said. "You are my choice." Jonah went still. Then softer, "That's dangerously close to romantic." "It's dangerously close to honest," Sarai replied. She lifted the seed. The corridor seemed to inhale. A soft click came from the empty cradle like a seal breaking. The fog surged in a spiral, not violent, not random. It flowed past Sarai's arm and wrapped Jonah's suit seams with delicate precision. His suit alarms chirped once and died, not from damage, but like they had been muted. "Sarai," Jonah whispered. "I can hear counting." "Stay with me," Sarai said. "Tell me what you see." Jonah's pupils tracked invisible shapes. "A white room," he said, voice shaking. "No windows, a symbol on the wall, that quarantine sigil but older." The wall Sarai sounded satisfied. "Compatible." Sarai's stomach dropped. "Compatible how?" "His mind has a recess," the wall Sarai said. "A place made to hold a seed without tearing." Jonah swallowed hard. "That's not possible. I'm just a guy with debt." The fog tightened, almost gentle. Jonah flinched, then steadied like he was forcing himself not to run. "I remember," he whispered. "A woman with your eyes, she's singing. She tells me to be quiet so the guards don't hear." Sarai's throat went dry. "You never met me before Kestrel Ring." "I know," Jonah said, "but my head does." The seed pulsed faster in Sarai's hand, and she felt the rhythm sync to Jonah's heartbeat. A thought slid into her mind that was not hers. Bring him closer. Sarai snapped her focus to Jonah and pressed her helmet to his, forehead to forehead through glass. It was ridiculous. It was also real. "Listen," she said, slow and clear. "You are Jonah Keen. You hate protein paste. You almost set a vent on fire. You promised to pull me back." Jonah's hands rose, trembling, and gripped her wrists. "I promised." "Then pull," Sarai said. "Now." Jonah breathed in as if hauling something heavy. The fog around him loosened a fraction. His eyes cleared just enough to hold hers. "The Solace isn't a ship," he said hoarsely. "It's a nursery." The wall Sarai spoke again, and this time the words landed like a knife. "Kestrel Ring's council did not send you to save the station. They sent you to deliver the seed to them." Sarai's blood ran cold. "Why?" "To grow more keys," the wall Sarai said. "More divers, more control." Ahead the corridor lights brightened, and a door cycled open toward the airlock. Behind them the corridor sealed with a hard metallic click, like a lock turning twice. The Solace was offering an exit, on its terms. Jonah's voice dropped into a whisper that didn't fully sound like him. "Return it," he said, eyes flicking toward the wall. "Become whole." Sarai felt the ship listen, the fog holding its breath. If the only way to save Jonah is to merge with the first Sarai, would you trust the version of yourself that has been waiting in the wall? The moment Sarai crossed the threshold, the ship began rewriting the air around her like it was correcting a mistake. They had docked with the quarantined archive ship Solace of Tythran to retrieve the seed for Kestrel Ring, but the nanophage fog behaved like a trained swarm, and a voice wearing Sarai's cadence demanded a price. Now Sarai and Jonah moved down a ribbed corridor toward the glowing cradle, tethered together, with the fog parting as if it recognized her footsteps. The corridor smelled wrong. Not rot, not metal. Something like rain on hot stone, mixed with the antiseptic bite of memory gel. Lights woke in sequence ahead of them, never behind, as if the Solace refused to let them retreat. "Objective," Jonah said, forcing steadiness. "Grab seed. Exit. Do not accept invitations from sentient wallpaper." Sarai kept her eyes on the cradle at the far end. "Agreed." "Danger," Jonah added. "Nanophage fog echo hazard. And your voice has been stolen by a ship with boundary issues." Sarai almost smiled, also agreed. The fog drifted close to her visor, then recoiled, like it didn't want to touch her suit. Her diver's band vibrated again, the same greeting pulse. The Solace wanted her receptive. It wanted her open. On the wall, the embedded silhouette shifted. The second Sarai watched them approach with a patient expression that made Sarai's skin prickle. When it spoke, the words came out intimate, like a secret shared between twins. "You brought him," it said. "Good." Jonah swallowed. "I'm right here, you know. You can address me like a person." The wall Sarai's eyes slid to him. "You are a person," it said. "You are also a stabilizer." Sarai's grip on the tether tightened. "Explain." The fog thickened, then stretched into thin strands that pointed toward Jonah, like fingers. Jonah's voice wavered despite his effort. "Stabilizer as in, emotional support. Because I can do that, but I charge extra. Sarai glanced back at him. Through the helmet glass, his attempt at humor looked like a shield held with trembling hands. She felt the urge to pull him behind her again, not because it would help, but because it would satisfy the part of her that needed to protect something real. "Jonah," she said softly, "look at me." He did. His eyes locked on hers, and the fog's movement slowed as if it had hit resistance. "You're not payment," Sarai said. "You're my exit plan." Jonah's mouth twitched. "Romantic." "It's practical," Sarai replied. Then quieter, "and it's true." For a beat, Jonah's breathing steadied. The line between their suits hummed as the magnetic tethers adjusted. A simple mechanical sound, but it felt like a vow. They reached the cradle. Up close, the seed was not a simple sphere. It was a pale crystal core suspended in a lattice that pulsed with slow, living rhythm. Dark filaments inside it twisted like roots seeking soil. Each pulse sent a faint tone through Sarai's teeth, the same note the corridor had been humming since they entered. Jonah's scanner display flickered. "It's not just data," he murmured. "It's active, it's incubating." Sarai lifted her wrist sprayer and misted antiphage gel. The fog pulled away from the seed but did not disperse. It formed a ring around the cradle, a quiet audience. "Take it," the wall Sarai said, "but take it correctly." Sarai kept her voice firm. "Why is Jonah required?" "Because you are resonance," the wall Sarai answered. "And resonance alone shatters. A seed needs a listener. A human mind is porous. It absorbs noise without breaking." Jonah blinked. "That sounds insulting." "It is descriptive," the wall Sarai said. "Your species survives by adapting to interference. Hers was built to conduct it." Sarai's stomach turned at the word built. Jonah's hand lifted, hesitant, then hovered near Sarai's forearm. Not touching, asking permission without words. She nodded once. His gloved fingers rested lightly against her suit, just enough pressure to remind her that her body was hers, that she was not a key on a ring. "Sarai," Jonah said low, "if this thing tries to crawl into my brain, I'm going to say a lot of unflattering things about your career choices." "You'll be first in line," Sarai said. "I'll frame the complaint." Jonah's laugh was quiet, but it held. "Okay. Tell me what to do." Sarai stared at the seed. The diver's band grew warm. She could feel the music in the air, a chord resolving toward her. The solace was not begging. It was executing a protocol. "Anchor me," Sarai said. "Talk. Keep your voice steady. If I drift into echo, you pull me back with something real." "Define real," Jonah said. Sarai didn't look away from the seed. "Tell me what you ate before we launched." Jonah paused, then sounded almost offended. "Protein paste, the one that claims to be spiced. It tastes like regret." Sarai's mouth lifted. "Good, keep going." She reached toward the cradle. The moment her fingers crossed the lattice line, the ship sang. The fog surged upward, not attacking but forming shapes, faces, scenes. A bright room, a child's lungs learning rhythm, the foundry lullaby in the background. Sarai's vision blurred at the edges. Jonah's voice cut in fast, steady. "You're still in the corridor. Your left hand is shaking. I am thinking about how the paste is somehow worse when it's warm." Sarai clung to his words like a rope. "Keep talking. I once tried to improve it with actual spices," Jonah said. "I nearly set a vent filter on fire. The station fined me for creative endangerment." Sarai breathed in, breathed out. The echo shifted, frustrated. Her fingers closed around the seed's lattice. Cold shot up her arm, not physical cold, emotional cold, like a door closing somewhere deep inside her. Then the wall Sarai spoke again, and this time it wasn't wearing warmth. "Stop," it said. Sarai froze. "Why?" "Because you are not the authorized carrier," the wall Sarai answered. Jonah's voice cracked. "What does that mean?" The fog parted down the corridor, revealing the embedded silhouette more clearly. Metal peeled back like petals. The second Sarai's body was not fused into the wall by accident. It was held there, cradled, preserved. "Authorized entry," the wall Sarai said, and smiled with a calm that made Sarai's stomach drop. "Authorized return. not authorized removal. Sarai's pulse hammered. I'm Sarai Vanth. The wall Sarai tilted its head. You are Sarai Vanth, it agreed. Version 2. A diver grown from a fragment, a portable key. A tool that learned tenderness. Jonah inhaled sharply. No, that's not. Sarai's voice went thin. If I'm version 2, who are you? The wall Sarai's eyes softened, almost pitying. I am the first, it said, and I have been keeping the seed safe by keeping it inside me. The cradle's filaments twitched as if hearing its name. Sarai felt it, suddenly, like a heartbeat not hers, searching. The wall Sarai continued, precise as a contract. To move the seed, someone must carry it. The first cannot leave. The second cannot hold it without tearing. The human can carry it. The human can survive the noise. Jonah's hand tightened on Sarai's arm. Sarai, tell me you are not considering this. Sarai stared at the seed, then at Jonah, then at the serene face in the wall that wore her eyes. The solace's lights dimmed behind them, sealing the corridor with a soft, final click. If the only way out is to let the seed choose a host, who do you sacrifice when the ship demands a heartbeat? The solace opened like a throat, and Sarai heard her own voice welcoming her from inside the wall. Minutes ago they had docked and seen the seed suspended in a cradle of living metal. Then the bulkhead grew Sarai's silhouette and spoke her name without static. The beacon kept repeating. Now she hovered at the quarantine threshold while nanophage fog drifted in neat spirals, as if waiting for instructions. Stay out of the corridor, Jonah said. Your suit feed shows the hull tissue moving. That's not decay, that's design. Sarai steadied her breathing. The diver's band on her finger pulsed like a quiet metronome. I'm not walking into a hallucination trap. The wall Sarai smiled, too calm to be human, too familiar to be safe. You took the key, it said in Sarai's cadence. Come return the seed. Jonah let out a dry, frightened laugh. I hate ships that talk. Sarai misted a thin spray of antiphage gel. The fog swallowed it and held its shape, organized, obedient. That was the real danger. If this swarm reached Kestrel Ring's air intakes, it could eat through systems faster than any emergency crew could patch them. We grab the seed and we leave, Sarai said. No heroics, no conversations with haunted architecture. Jonah's fingers clicked on his console. It's broadcasting a carrier signal, not random. It's layered like music. And it's syncing to you. Sarai's stomach tightened. Resonance. Yeah, Jonah said. It thinks you're the conductor. The wall Sarai leaned forward in the metal, as if the ship could lean. Don't be afraid, it said. You were made for this. Sarai's jaw set. There was her flaw right there. Curiosity dressed as duty. She forced herself to look at Jonah's camera feed instead of the corridor. His eyes were wide, but he was still there, still choosing to stay. You said it can't know what I haven't given it, Sarai told him. Jonah nodded once. Ask it something only you would know, something you never said out loud. Sarai let her fingertips brush Jonah's gloved hand through the thin magnetic seam between them. A brief anchor of warmth and reality. If I drift, she said, pull me back. Jonah's voice softened. Always. Sarai faced the corridor. If you're me, tell Jonah the first sound I remember. The wall Sarai answered instantly. The Foundry lullaby, it said. The one they played while you learned to breathe. Sarai went cold. She had never used that word near a port mic, never written it, never let it become real outside her skull. Jonah's silence was heavy. Sarai, that's not a guess. No, Sarai said, it's a receipt. The fog brightened a fraction, pleased. The ship knew her origin. Worse, it thought it owned it. Jonah snapped back into motion. Okay, drone, we do this with a drone. Sarai almost smiled. You're learning. Fast, Jonah said, because I prefer breathing. She clipped a micro-drone to the tether line and sent it forward. The fog parted for it like curtains. On her visor, the seed filled the frame. A pale crystal sphere threaded with dark filaments that twitched as if dreaming. The drone's clamp touched the cradle. The solace screamed, not through speakers, through Sarai's bones. Her vision flashed white, and for one brutal heartbeat she was somewhere else, strapped down, listening to a gentle song while unseen voices counted her breaths. "Sink is stable," a voice said. "Keep her calm," another replied. Sarai bit down hard and forced herself back into the corridor view. Jonah's voice cut through, sharp and urgent. "Talk to me. Your vitals spiked." "I'm here," Sarai said, and hated how thin it sounded. The wall Sarai's smile vanished. "You cannot take it," it said. "You can only accept it." The fog wrapped the drone. Status lights shifted from green to a soft amber like obedience. "Drone S gone," Jonah said. "It's not malfunctioning. It's recruited." Deep inside the solace, a door opened with a wet metallic sigh. A low tone rolled down the corridor, timed to Sarai's pulse. Then the wall Sarai spoke again, gentle as a promise and sharp as a blade. "If you want the seed," it said, "bring Jonah." Jonah's breath caught. "Why me?" Sarai didn't answer. She stared at the cradle and understood the shape of the trap. The ship had not called her to steal. It had called her to trade. She clipped Jonah's tether to her own line, close enough that if the fog surged, it would have to take her first. "Stay behind me," she said, quieter than she meant. Jonah gave a thin laugh. "That's either devotion or terrible planning." "But both," Sarai said, and pulled them forward, one controlled glide at a time, into a corridor that knew her childhood song. If the solace wanted Jonah as payment, what was it planning to do with the part of Sarai that still believed she could save him? Would you cross the threshold when the ship demands someone you care about? The quarantine beacon was still screaming when Sarai Vanth realized the dead ship ahead was calling her name. The salvage lane around Kestrel Ring was empty tonight, which meant two things. The pay would be obscene, and the danger would be honest about it. Sarai stood at the cockpit glass of her cutter, the Moth, watching the derelict rotate in slow silence. It was enormous, shaped like a cathedral laid on its side, ribs of black alloy lit by warning strobes that had no right to still function. Across its hull, a quarantine sigil pulsed in sickly amber. Beyond it drifted pale vapor as if the ship exhaled. The vapor was not gas. It was a swarm. Nanophage fog, the kind that ate circuitry, skin, and lies with equal appetite. "Tell me you didn't accept this contract," Jonah Keene said behind her. Sarai didn't turn yet. She let the ship's external speakers carry the beacon's message again, distorted by distance and static. It repeated every 12 seconds. "Sarai VANTHE, authorized entry, please return the seed." Jonah exhaled like a man trying not to swear in front of a priest. "That's not creepy at all." "I prefer professionally unsettling," Sarai said, finally glancing back. Jonah was strapped into the co-pilot cradle, all long limbs and tired eyes, his hair doing its usual thing where it argued with gravity and almost won. His flight suit was patched at the elbow with tape the color of old coffee. "You're smiling," he accused. "It's a reflex. When I'm about to die, my face likes to pretend it's a celebration." Sarai tapped the hollow and brought up the contract summary. One item, one objective. Retrieve an object-labeled seed from the quarantined vessel Solace of Tythran. Delivery to Kestrel Ring Station within 6 hours. Payment. Enough credits to buy a new reactor and still have leftovers for a life she had never planned. Danger: uncontrolled nanophage fog inside the ship. Danger: unknown life signs. Danger: echo hazard. Jonah leaned forward. Echo hazard means the ship is full of memory residue. Audio loops, emotional impressions, hallucination triggers. The beacon saying your name is already proof. Sarai's fingers hovered over the comm toggle. The beacon knows my voice print. That's the part you find normal. But Sarai let her shoulders settle, a small ritual of control. The Solace was an archive ship. They stored living blueprints, minds, languages, cultural seeds. If someone tried to steal it, they would have built locks keyed to something rare. "And you're rare." Sarai met his gaze. Her iridescent skin along her cheekbones caught the cockpit light, shifting from pearl to midnight blue. Her eyes, a luminous gray, didn't blink as often as humans expected. It made people nervous. She had learned to use it. I'm a resonance diver, she said. I retrieve things that want to stay lost. That's the job title. The personality flaw is cannot resist forbidden doors. Sarai's mouth twitched. It's not a flaw. It's curiosity with excellent posture. Jonah unstrapped, floated closer, and braced a hand on the bulkhead beside her. He was careful not to touch her. Humans tended to hesitate around her, like they were afraid she'd shatter or bite. I checked the station news, he said. Kestrel Ring is on ration protocol. Power cuts. Sick bays full. If that nanophage fog reaches the habitat modules, it'll chew through life support. Everyone will suffocate in polite darkness. Sarai turned back to the derelict. The vapor outside rippled as if listening. The contract came from the station council, she said. They're desperate, so am I. Jonah's voice softened. Desperate for the credits, or desperate to prove you're not what the rumors say. Sarai's throat tightened in that annoying way it did when she got close to the truth. The rumors followed her across ports and corridors. Designed being. Engineered key. Not quite a person, only a tool that learned how to talk. She lifted a hand, palm up. In it she held a thin ring of black glass, her diver's band. The band let her feel resonance the way others felt heat. When I dive, she said, I can hear memory like music. Sometimes it's beautiful, sometimes it's screaming. I can't always tell the difference fast enough. Jonah's eyes flicked to the band. That's the part that scares you. Sarai nodded once. I'm afraid I'll hear something in there that sounds like me, and I'll follow it. Jonah's grin was small but real. Then don't follow it alone. Sarai looked at him fully now. There was a beat of silence where the cockpit felt too small for two breathing people and one ship that said her name like a prayer. I didn't bring you for heroics, she said. I know, Jonah replied. You brought me because I'm the only linguist engineer you trust, not to romanticize ancient alien tech. Sarai lifted a brow ridge. You romanticize it constantly. Only when it deserves it, Jonah said. Also, I'm excellent at running away in a straight line. Sarai surprised herself by laughing, quiet and rough. It eased something in her chest. She reached out and with deliberate slowness, touched Jonah's wrist where his glove met bare skin. Human warmth, steady pulse. A simple fact that insisted on the present. Stay on my channel, she said. If the echoes try to wear my voice like a mask, you pull me back. Promise. Jonah covered her fingers with his own, gentle, like he was afraid she might regret it if he moved too fast. I promise, he said. And Sarai, yes, if the dead ship proposes to you, you're allowed to say no. Sarai huffed. That depends on the dowry. They prepped and practiced silence after that. Suit seals. Filter checks. Anti-nanophage gel loaded into wrist sprayers. Their helmets synced to a shared audio channel with hard cutoffs, so neither of them could whisper themselves into madness without the other hearing. The airlock on the Moth clanged open. Cold, metallic air rolled in, carrying faint static that crawled along Sarai's teeth. She stepped onto the tether line and pushed off, gliding toward the Solace's docking collar. As she approached, the quarantine sigil dimmed, not because it failed, because it recognized her. The docking collar iris opened with a slow, wet sound like a throat deciding to speak. Inside, darkness waited, threaded with drifting motes of fog that shimmered like dust in moonlight. Jonah's voice came through the channel. Do you see that? The fog is organized. Sarai's diver band vibrated. Not a warning, a greeting. Then the beacon spoke again, closer now, no static, perfectly clear in her own cadence. Sarai, it said, I've been lonely. Sarai froze mid-glide. Jonah swore softly. That was your voice, he said. It wasn't me, Sarai whispered and hated how uncertain it sounded. A light ignited within the ship. Not bright. Just enough to outline a corridor shaped like a ribcage. On the far wall something glowed. A palm-sized sphere suspended in a lattice of living metal. The seed. And beside it, embedded in the bulkhead as if the ship had grown around her, was a silhouette with Sarai's outline, her height, her shoulders, her ears. A second Sarai, asleep inside the wall, eyes closed, skin faintly luminescent. Jonah's breath hitched over comms. Tell me that's a statue. The second Sarai opened her eyes from within the metal and smiled. Welcome home, she said in Sarai's voice. Sarai's hand tightened on the tether until it hurt. The fog pulsed like a heart waking up. If the ship had been waiting for her, what exactly had it been keeping inside all this time? Would you step into the dark when it calls